Rain hammered against the windows like a relentless drum, echoing the storm that had always raged inside my childhood home. I sat silently on the edge of my twin brother's bed, eyes tracing the gleaming trophies lining the shelves, trophies my parents said defined greatness, the ones I was never allowed to earn. My fingers brushed the smooth wood of his desk as he laughed, the sound sharp and cruel, and I realized for the first time that I wasn't just different, I was invisible. From as early as I could remember, my parents' love was skewed, tilted entirely toward him. While he celebrated extravagant birthdays and sleepovers with friends, I watched from the sidelines, clinging to my grandmother's warm hugs and the secret chocolates she smuggled me, the only indulgence I was allowed. School offered no refuge either. I made friends easily. My twins struggled socially, resenting my openness. That resentment festered into a weapon. I remember the first time I saw him punch himself, black eye swelling, ready to accuse me of abuse. My parents believed him immediately, tears in my mother's eyes, while I stood pleading my innocence. The whispers in hallways began, subtle at first, then cruel. Invitations disappeared. Friends became strangers. Teachers questioned me. Each lie tightened the invisible chains of isolation around me. By 15, my bedroom had become a battlefield. Doors ripped from hinges, my belongings tossed across the floor, my pleas ignored. The weight of false accusations pressed down like stone. Yet, in the darkness, there was light, grandmother. She was my safe harbor, my unwavering champion. Her gentle smile, whispered assurances, and secret coins were proof that someone believed in me, that I had worth beyond my parents' judgment. The breaking point came unexpectedly. My parents, unable to see past my brother's lies, decided I no longer belonged under their roof. I stood frozen as my father packed my belongings, my pleas ignored. The world felt like it had collapsed. Only grandmother's determined eyes reminded me that survival was possible. She came, packed the rest of my things, and guided me into her car. I felt a spark of freedom, terrifying and exhilarating. Leaving the home I'd known, I carried more than clothes. I carried years of abuse, betrayal, and humiliation. And yet, as the streets of my small town stretched before me, I realized this. The world beyond my parents' judgment would reveal something unexpected: freedom. College would later become my sanctuary, a place where my voice, long silenced, could finally speak. College was my proving ground. For the first time, I chose my friends, my schedule, my path. No one monitored my every move. No one compared me to my twin. I discovered writing, at first a way to make extra money, then a passion I couldn't ignore. Freelancing became my lifeline. Every blog post, article, or client project was a small victory, proof that I could create my own success from nothing. Still, shadows of the past lingered. Memories of cruel jokes, accusations, and empty rooms haunted me. My brother's false narratives had branded me for life, or so I feared. Social anxiety remained, but I learned to channel it into productivity. I thrived in solitude, crafting a career from the chaos of my past. With every positive client review and every paid project, I felt a rising sense of self-worth. I traveled, explored new cities, and slowly began to enjoy life outside the cage of my childhood. Yet, even as I flourished, a small voice reminded me of unfinished business. My parents and brother had wronged me, and the world needed to know the truth, not for revenge, but for closure. By my mid-20s, I had established myself as a respected content writer. Invitations for seminars and online workshops arrived. Each talk, each presentation, each Instagram post was a subtle assertion. I survived. I thrived. And the boy who had haunted my childhood with lies was powerless to touch me. But life has a way of demanding reckoning. One afternoon, after a successful TV appearance and glowing social media recognition, the calls came. My parents. The first real contact in years. Their words were syrupy, congratulatory, but beneath it lay expectation. They wanted money, help with house renovations, support for a life they had neglected to give me. Shock and anger surged. After all they had done, years of emotional neglect, public humiliation, and false accusations, they dared ask me to financially support them? I could have said no and walked away. But instead, I realized this was an opportunity. Not just for retribution, but for truth. For accountability. I picked up the phone and called them, heart-pounding. Their voices were warm, familiar, manipulative. They congratulated me on my success, but soon, the conversation twisted. My earnings, my lifestyle, my independence became the subject. We're family, they said. You should help us. I hesitated, then spoke. I will only help if you admit, publicly, that my brother lied all those years. That you believed him and caused me harm. Only then will I even consider it. The silence was deafening. My father scoffed. My mother tried to rationalize. They begged for private discussion, but I refused. The conditions were non-negotiable. This wasn't about money, it was about acknowledgement. Years of abuse could not be erased, but at least accountability could be demanded. Then came the bombshell, my brother's text. Smug, dismissive, cruel. He admitted to lying years ago, but he tried to twist it into nothing, trying to shame me for holding on to the past. He mocked my independence, my unmarried status, and even my refusal to financially support them. The audacity cut deep. I realized then that confrontation alone wasn't enough. I needed undeniable proof. I wrote an email to my family, chronicling every detail, the favoritism, the lies, the humiliation, my suspension, my expulsion, and finally, my career accomplishments. I attached my brother's confession. I hit send. And waited. The fallout was immediate. Relatives expressed shock and support. My parents and brother reacted with anger, texts turning violent. I involved a lawyer. A cease and desist was issued. Suddenly, the predators of my past were powerless. My grandmother, ever my anchor, stood by me unwaveringly. The tension escalated as word of my email spread. Family gatherings became battlegrounds. My parents faced criticism, cousins whispered apologies, and my brother's carefully constructed image began to crumble. The public acknowledgement of his lies shook him. Meanwhile, I continued building my career. Seminars, workshops, and TV appearances reinforced my independence. I realized that success itself was my weapon, proof that I had overcome years of neglect, betrayal, and isolation. The climax loomed not in confrontation, but in watching truth ripple through my family network. Every cousin, aunt, and uncle who reached out to support me strengthened my resolve. My parents' frantic attempts to reach me were futile. They had no leverage, no moral ground, no narrative left intact. I allowed myself a moment of clarity. This was no longer about revenge. It was about reclaiming life, dignity, and boundaries. Each professional milestone, each supportive message, each step forward was a reaffirmation of my power. The breaking point came at a family event I was invited to as a guest speaker. My parents were present, awkward and desperate. In front of relatives, I told my story, the truth of my childhood, the lies, the favoritism, and my brother's manipulations. Gasps filled the room. My brother's face drained of color. The weight of his deceit, long hidden, finally confronted him. My parents' eyes widened in disbelief and shame. They had been forced to see the consequences of believing lies and neglecting a child. It wasn't vengeance, it was justice. A reclaiming of years lost, of reputation restored. I stood tall, composed, and heard the room's acknowledgement of my suffering. For the first time, my voice was not drowned out. It resonated, commanding respect and closure. Life after the confrontation was serene, powerful in its quietness. My grandmother remained my anchor. Career continued to flourish. Invitations for talks, interviews, and collaborations flowed. I traveled, explored, and lived fully free from the toxic shadows of my past. My parents' absence became permanent. They had been offered a path to reconciliation, but refused accountability. My brother attempted minor contact, but remained isolated, powerless without manipulation. The email, the lawyer, and the public acknowledgement had set boundaries that would last a lifetime. I learned to thrive not despite the past, but because of it. Each challenge, each betrayal, Each tear fueled resilience. I spent weekends with my grandmother, shared stories, planted flowers, and embraced the life I had carved for myself. As I looked back, I realized freedom wasn't just physical, it was emotional, professional, and moral. I had survived, I had succeeded, and I had reclaimed my narrative. And in the quiet moments, sitting in my home far from their judgment, I smiled. The girl who had been silenced, humiliated, and exiled was finally heard, and she had no one to answer to but herself.